Okay, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time you're watching this. I'm Grant. My group is Ed Lee, Raylan, Garrett, and Hannah, and myself, of course. And the theory we decided to choose is Konin's theory. Kounin? I think it's Kounin. Yeah, it's Kounin. And his theory is essentially is that management and uh, discipline in the classroom, they aren't two separate things. They are a cohesive unit. You're probably wondering, like, who's Dr. Jacob Cohn? And like, is he a doctor in literature or something like that? Dr. Kounin actually focused his career on educational theory. He graduated from Iowa State University with a doctorate. That's how you got a doctor in front of his name. Uh, Kounin did not only create his theory, uh, but also practice it in several case studies that he did in the 70s. Kounin also believed that management and discipline, like I said, should be intertwined rather than two separate entities. Motivation of the theory. Let me move that over here. That way I can read. Thank you. Kounin's first observations of an intriguing pattern in student behavior was when he asked the student, God, I gotta move it back, in his own classroom to put something away. He noticed that the student around him suddenly followed in focusing their attention. He watched as the correction of one student behavior actually spread to other students engaging in inappropriate behaviors and resulted in a much more ordered room. He later described this phenomenon as the ripple effect. Think of when you throw a pebble into a pond and it ripples through. That he's essentially saying that's how the effect works. Uh, this led to his 5 year long observation of students of all ages. He didn't just focus on like high school or elementary. His case studies that he did were actually through the K through 12 system. Uh, so his theory could be practiced at different stages of like childhood development. Because honestly, sometimes a freshman in high school can think like a third grader and act like it. Usually, you're not going to have the same experience with a high school student when you would with a elementary student. Um, which this led to his 5 year long observations of students of all ages watching this process. And then he proceeded to switch his thinking and ask himself, how do teachers actually prepare or manage their classrooms before the behaviors occurred? This then helped him conduct his theory about the classroom management. Um, he believed that in order for a teacher to have an effective connection between management and teaching, there needed to be a good lesson movement. The lesson movement is achieved through with itness, which I know we have talked about in class, uh, overlapping momentum, smoothness, and group focus. And with strategies and techniques, whoa. With itness is, a teacher's ability to scan a classroom occasionally, make sure to be understanding of every situation in your classroom. Firmness is also important. It enhances the ripple effect. With firmness, a student is given clear warnings, which not only affect the target student, but also other students by setting the example. Overlapping, attending to two or more needs in the classroom. That's also very important for a teacher to be able to do. Multitasking is a huge part. Being able to, go up to one student and, give them like positive critique or something like that, and then look into another student and is like, hey, that's an excellent job. I'll get with you in a second while you're still helping that student. Because it's just good management skills. Group focus, being able to hold the attention of your entire classroom, that's a key factor in management. You don't want your students to be looking out in the window when you're trying to give a lesson, whether it's social studies, math, English, all can relate into one thing. You want your students' attention. And that was also a big focus on this theory. And then interest and involvement maintenance, which kind of relates to group focus in a way, since you want your lessons to be engaging. I know that there's been plenty of classrooms that I guarantee all of you have experienced where um, it was a simple open up your textbook and take down some notes on this piece of paper right here. That's not engagement. You're not going to get a good lesson, good learning environment from that. But Conan's theory is essentially going against that, saying that, you have to have like the lessons have to be engaging, that students have to be involved, um, and they have to be interesting, uh, just to allow learning or good learning at the very least to take place. Management of time and space. I keep moving my thing. I'm having so much fun with that. Um, you have the ripple effect, uh, takes over takes over a time. You know, teacher corrects one behavior, that ripples to effect to be like, oh, well, he got in trouble for that. Or, you know, not necessarily, you don't have to be in trouble for that. But, this happened because the student did this. I, as a student, am going to correct that. I'm going to follow what's right. And, we talk about overlapping, a teacher's ability to deal with more than one problem at once, keeping track of space, witness, is essentially the eyes in the back of the head, um, to know what's going on at all times in the whole classroom. Uh, a teacher's not going to be very effective if they're just simply focusing on like a few groups of students. Like I know there's been student teachers that are like, oh, I'm just going to focus on, the star pupils of my class while they're letting the kids who are struggling in like the back row just continue to struggle. And that's also another thing that Conan's theory points out, that cannot happen. Transitions, being able to go from one thing to another, whether it's elementary, a transition from reading to lining up for lunch or recess or specials, um, and having a routine, simply just saying, all right, kids, let's line up, let's go, is not as effective. And Kuhn's theory points that out. Um, but, you know, having like, all right, having the routine set up at the beginning of like school where it's like, all right, I need group one line up, group two. That way it's a safe way for kids and even, high schoolers to line up too in a way. And activities, as we stated, being proactive and being engaging in the classroom is a key factor in making sure that your students are, you know, uh, involved and making sure there's no disturbance going on while a lesson is being done. And as I've talked about student engagement, yeah, baby. Whoa! Kuhn's theory focuses on group focus, meaning every student is involved and focused on the classroom activity. There are three parts to maintaining group focus: the format, group alerting, and accountability. Big threes. Format tells the student how they should participate and what they're required to do. So that's essentially teacher instruction. Um, if you're doing a group activity, the teacher's going to explain it at the beginning. um, group alerting refers to ways in which teachers keep children on their toes, with one way being selecting random students to answer questions. If you're going to keep asking the same students who are raising their hand a question, you're going to get an answer from them, but you're not going to get as much feedback as a teacher needs from students that are struggling. And you're going to run into the case where a student's going to be afraid to answer the wrong question, um, or give the wrong answer to the question. But being able to have that environment where it's if you don't ask questions, you never learn, um, is key to this theory and classroom management in general. And accountability refers to students being able to recite and demonstrate what they know. Um, and that's where all those steps that we talked about in the previous slide. Um, which one was it? I think, yeah, like, group focus right here, and setting up pretty much putting the building blocks in for your lessons and for your teaching to have the students engaged and kind of affects the accountability. If you make your lessons more interesting, more interactive, more engaging, you're going to have better accountability from your students. Kounin's method allows children to understand their role in the classroom, um, but not know when they will need to perform. This keeps students engaged, but they will need to pay attention to when it's their turn and what they are being asked. Positive social interaction and culture. Student-to-student relationships are the forefront of this theory. Um, Through the ripple effect, students not only see the way the teacher reacts to certain situations, but students also see each other and the reactions to their situation and are influenced accordingly. Kounin's model suggests these important interactions as the core of how students' behaviors are changed and fit better to the classroom environment. So as we've been talking, uh, the the engagement of the lessons, group work is a core factor in this. Um, a teacher-student relationship is important, but a student-student social interaction and setting up the culture in the classroom to where they see how a teacher reacts to like this misbehavior or this a student raises his hand and might not get the answer right, but the way the teacher reacts to that will essentially set the tone and the ripple effect that we've talked about in this slide. It will pretty much set the tone for the rest of the class. So as a teacher wanting to manage the classroom very well, you got to keep an eye on that. Uh, Talk about a few coin terms that we've mentioned a lot. Witness, a teacher's ability to be aware of what is going on in all parts of the classroom at all times. The ripple effect, the idea that fixing a misbehavior on one student will positively impact the behavior of students around them. Uh, like I said before, imagine throwing a pebble into a pond and you see that ripple. Uh, that's that reaction from the teacher, and the ripple is the effect on your students. And then, of course, overlapping a teacher's ability to focus on two things at once, multitasking. For example, a teacher can be giving a student individual feedback and at the same time give another student a quick word of positive feedback. There's our resources. We actually found the Jacob Kounin's book at the library. So all of our information came from there. And that's about it. So